Proteins are molecules that are built from small molecules called amino acids. They contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, like the other biopolymers, but they also have nitrogen and a little bit of sulfur. So those amino acids, there's 20 common ones that make up proteins. They look kind of like this. They have an amino group, which has a nitrogen, a carboxy group, which has a carbon with two oxygens and H attached to it. That's one each end of the amino acid. And then the thing that makes them all different is this side chain called an R group. There are very simple R groups, like just a hydrogen would be glycine, or they can be very complex. And by putting these things together, these 20 amino acids in different combinations, we get all the different proteins that are out there. So there's some general things you should know about proteins. Those amino acids join to one another with an amine group to a carboxyl group. So one end joins the other end of another amino acid. And the bond that's formed between them is called a peptide bond. That's very important to know that there is no limit to the combination of those 20 amino acids, either joining together or in their total length. So we could have huge proteins or very small proteins. The instructions to build them are written in the DNA, and it's the overall shape of that protein that's going to make it do its job very well if it does. And we're going to take a look at that now. That three-dimensional structure is of the most importance to proteins. There are levels of structure we can talk about in proteins, starting with the primary, and that's really pretty simple and easy to determine. It's the one amino acid attached to another amino acid from beginning to the end. The secondary structure is a little more complex. That's little places along that primary structure, along that chain, that fold up into specific regions, things like alpha helices or beta pleated sheets. And how those primary and secondary structures fit together in a three-dimensional space gives you the tertiary structure, which is the overall three-dimensional shape of a protein. And that's important for it's important for all proteins. Some proteins only have one, but many proteins work with other proteins to do their job, and that gives us the quaternary structure, or the overall three-dimensional shape of the entire active protein. And it's that quaternary and tertiary structures that determine what proteins can do. And proteins are probably the most important of the biological molecules. You can think of them as the machines of life. The structures of an animal, a cell, and plants are mostly protein. In fact, when you look at an animal, what you see are mostly proteins. Functionally, anything that happens in an organism happens because of a protein. Many of those are enzymes that speed up chemical reactions, but those enzymes are mostly proteins. So again, they are the premier molecule of the four biopolymers. They work using energy derived from carbs. They're kept in the cell or in their locations by membranes from lipids, and the instructions to build them are written in the DNA.